The weather has been so warm in my area, and I was looking at the 10-day forecast, and there is no frost in sight. And that is a gardener's dream, right? Like to be able to extend the season as much as possible. And I'm so tempted to go plant these seed packets because I want more food and I want more flowers. But I can't do that. Oh, I can do it, but it would be a total waste of my time. Because despite the warm weather, these plants would do absolutely nothing in my garden. And that's because, despite the fact that I have this warm weather is not the only thing that plants need to grow. They need something else, especially in the winter, that despite my best effort, I won't be able to get because I don't control nature. Today, I'm going to explain to you why growing things in the winter is pretty much impossible. And even if you have a greenhouse, it won't help because a greenhouse, while it can increase the warmth, it will not increase your day length. And day length is the most important thing that you need that you can't get in the winter to get your plants to grow. Okay, you're thinking, Vanessa, I know about day length. I know that sun loving plants need 6 or more hours of sun to grow, and shade loving plants need 3 hours or less. That's not what I'm talking about. That is entirely different from day length. Day length has more to do with the equinoxes and the solstices. I know that sounds very technical. I need you to take my word for it that in order for plants to grow, they need at least 10 hours of day length. That is to say that when the sun rises in the morning and when it sets at night, that amount of time needs to be at least 10 hours. Otherwise, your plants won't grow. In Greek mythology, we learn about Persephone, the daughter of Zeus, and Demeter. You know, Zeus, like the big Greek mythology god, and Demeter, who was the goddess of agriculture. Persephone was kidnapped by Hades, who was Zeus's brother, and taken to the underworld. Demeter didn't know this, and so she went searching the whole wide world for her daughter, and she couldn't find her. She became very sad. And in her grief, because she was the goddess of agriculture, the plants began to wilt and die. Zeus interfered and went to the underworld to get Persephone back to return to her mother. When he went to go get her, Hades would not let her go because she had eaten some seeds of a pomegranate. And so they struck a deal that because she had only eaten a few seeds, she could go back up to her mother, but she had to return to the underworld 1 month for every seed that she ate. This is one of those myths where there are different versions of the story. Some say she ate 6 seeds and so had to return for 6 months. Some say 4 seeds and so she had to return for 4 months. But nonetheless, the point is that she had to return to Hades in the underworld for a certain amount of time. And every time she returned to the underworld, Demeter became sad again. And so the plants would not grow as they should. This was the Greeks' way of explaining this phenomenon found in nature, where the plants don't grow because the day length is less than 10 hours a day. Knowing about the Persephone period is going to make you a better gardener. This is because it informs how you approach winter gardening. No, you cannot get anything to grow during the Persephone period, but you can plan your gardening so that by the time the Persephone period comes, you can harvest some of your growth. For me, here where I live, my first date where the sunlight is less than 10 hours is coming up right around the corner on November 19th. And the light doesn't get back above 10 hours until January 22nd. On January 22nd, we will get 10 hours and 1 minute of sunlight. And at that point, some plants will resume their growth in my area. This is helpful information. It's helpful information for two reasons. It informs how you approach your fall crops that you can harvest during the winter, but it also informs, and I think perhaps for me this is most important, when I can start my crops back up for spring. Because I don't have to wait for the weather to warm in March or April or May. I can start planting my plants as early as January 22nd to start seeing some progress. Okay, let's talk about the fall. It is said that most plants need about 8 to 12 weeks to come to maturity. And so you have to keep this in mind. You want your plants to have come to maturity by the time your Persephone period starts. And then from there, all you have to do is protect them from the cold weather. This is where a greenhouse comes into play. For example, I have some broccoli plants in my vegetable garden that is in production right now. I can harvest those florets all through winter if they last that long, right? I won't get any new florets because for me to get new florets, the plant would have to actively be growing, which it won't be doing. The florets that are there can be harvested. Leafy greens, on the other hand, need just about 6 weeks to come to maturity. What I should have done with the lettuce that I'm very tempted to put in the ground now is I should have started them about 6 weeks ago. And for the next few weeks, despite the fact that my Persephone period is around the corner, I'd be able to harvest beautiful greens from the vegetable garden. Like I mentioned, I think having this knowledge about the Persephone period is most helpful for the spring. When I understood this, this changed my entire perspective for how I approach the spring garden. While it's essentially useless for me to start things outside in December and the start of January, it is no longer useless once we get over that threshold of 10 hours of sunlight. Because I know that mine is coming on January 22nd, I know that anytime after January 22nd, I can plant things in my vegetable garden. And as long as I protect them from frost, which is where a greenhouse comes in very handy, they'll grow. And so this means that I don't have to wait till March or April when it warms up here. As long as I provide some sort of protection from these plants and increase their warmth, then they'll grow. And so you say, Vanessa, what about a greenhouse? Is a greenhouse entirely useless? No, a greenhouse is not entirely useless. Like I said, a greenhouse is helpful because it provides warmth and can keep your plants alive longer because they're not getting frostbitten all the time. But the other thing you can do with a greenhouse is you can add supplemental lighting to a greenhouse to increase the day length. Without supplemental lighting, the plants will just sit there in your greenhouse and not grow. But if you add supplemental lighting, that is to say, you add grow lights to your greenhouse, then they'll grow because they'll have over 10 hours. And so, my friends, I encourage you to learn about your Persephone period because if you're somebody who wants to take advantage of your growing season, it's very helpful to know when you can start despite the cold, as long as you provide some supplemental warmth, especially if you don't have supplemental lighting. If you have supplemental lighting and you have a fantastic greenhouse that's rigged up with all the things, then go for it. But if you don't have a greenhouse that's set up with all the things, you might consider setting it up with all the things and all the supplemental lighting. Otherwise, you have to wait until your Persephone period ends. I'll include a link in the bottom here where I was able to figure out the dates when my day length was less than 10 hours. I encourage you to check it out because it's not the same for everybody. It depends on where you are on the planet.